A reading from the Gospel according to Mark. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. After saying farewell to them, he went up the mountain to pray. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land. And when he saw that they were straining at the oars against an adverse wind, he came toward them early in the morning, walking on the sea. He intended to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost, and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And then he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. The word of the Lord. Fascinating study into human beings and the nature of human beings, this is. We are immediately following the story where Jesus has just fed the 5,000. We heard this yesterday, where clearly an undeniable miracle has happened in front of the disciples, where Jesus fed 5,000 people with just a little bit of bread and a little bit of fish. And yet, it says they still didn't get it because their hearts were hardened. Now, what does that have to do with this and the storm? It's fascinating because it says Jesus was walking along on the sea. He had seen them. He's walking along the sea. He wasn't going toward them. This is fascinating in Mark. It says he intended to just pass them by. He was just walking on by. He didn't see them in distress and try to rescue them. He was just minding his own business, going where he intended to go, and was leaving them to their devices. And they were the ones freaking out and terrified because they thought it was a ghost out on the water. And then he calms them and he says, "Take heart. It's not a ghost. It's just me." And he climbs into the boat with them and calms the storms. They were astounded because they hadn't learned the lesson about the loaves. So is this a lesson about trust? Is this a lesson about being willing to, able to trust in Jesus to provide? That you will be safe, you will be secured, you will be taken care of if you but trust in Jesus. In the story of the feeding of the 5,000, if you but trust in him, he will feed you, perhaps. The story on the storms. The boat is rocking along and you're terrified. If you but trust in Jesus, he will get into the boat and he will calm it. Jesus obviously trusted in them. He sent them on their way and didn't worry about where they were going. He wasn't even going to take care of them in the storm. It said he was just passing by. So this is not a matter of Jesus needing to trust in them. Clearly, he thinks the disciples have everything they need. They are the ones that don't think they have everything they need, and they don't quite get it yet. Now, when I think about my own life, I think I've had lots of instances where my fear, my inability to trust that God is there with me has gotten in my way. I've had times I've gone through food scarcity in my life, just as one example, where I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from. And what it's led to is a persistent fear or lack of trust that I deal with all my life, where I will then overeat and take more than I need, almost out of a inability to be afraid that I don't know where that next meal may come from. And I've let it control me and not be able to just trust. To trust that it will be okay. So I know how crippling that fear, that lack of trust can be. And what will it take? What will it take for us to be able to trust in Jesus? I think in my own life, it's something that you don't just do one time and then you've solved it forever. I think what I've seen in my own life is it's something you continue to work on. That Jesus, yes, he fed us, he fed the 5,000 of us this time, but what about next time? Jesus climbed into the boat and calmed the storm this time, but what about next time? I think it's reassuring to me to know that Jesus trusts in us as the disciples to be doing what we need to be doing, to be growing, to be learning, sometimes the hard way, sometimes the easy way, but that we're trying to be the people we're called to be. And Jesus demonstrates an ability to step in and be there with us when we need it. And it's through example after example of this that I look to, and I invite you to look to within your own fears, within your own things that are holding you back from trusting in Jesus, to look back at all of those times when God has been present in your life, and to be able to take that as a sign looking forward. God is with you. God knows what you need. God trusts in you to be the person that you're trying to be the best you can. And we can continue, you and I, to work on building that trust in Jesus. Amen.